unemployment, break away from the unemployment crisis that is facing Nigeria right now. What role that mentorship, networking, and diaspora connections they need?
All right. No, thank you. Sorry, before I answer that, can I speak to some of the last two conversations very quickly?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. So I'm actually a policy practitioner as well. There are many things I do, so don't worry. I'm actually a policy practitioner. I've worked in government in Nigeria in foreign policy. I've worked here in Canada across all three levels of government and doing policy work. And one of the things that, you tend to see that needs to happen from the policy perspective, because there was a question around what the government needs to do, and there was an answer around that, like setting the right policies in place. So there are three things that has to align for policy to be effective: political will, opportunity, and the opportunity I think is way overdue in Nigeria because this is a looming crisis and it has been for a while coming. And then the final piece is policy actors now, or policy entrepreneurs. Now, I want to focus a little bit more on the policy entrepreneurs because these are not necessarily government actors. It can be part of government actors, but it's not entirely government actors. These are the individuals, the advocacy groups, even the individuals who are impacted. And I think that that third piece is still very much lacking. Government is one piece. Government is a system, is a structure. It is one piece. The people who are impacted, the political will is another piece. Now, the other piece is these other people, when government puts out those policies, even if those policies exist, there are people who are still going to implement these policies. There are people who are going to own these policies, implement them, run with it, work with it. And I think that part is a piece of it that we haven't talked about as much. So the question then even becomes, to what degree are we as a society willing to push for these changes that we want to see? And I like the way Emmanuel put it, that at the end of the day, you really think about it. Yes, we can go down the rabbit hole, but it still comes down to the people and who they choose to vote in. If you're putting people in there who themselves don't even have high quality education, they're not going to put quality, they're not going to put value on quality education. And that's just the truth. So I think that there's also something to be said about Nigerian youth. There's an opportunity we have in our generation that if we're not stepping up into political offices, which is another angle entirely, and we're not advocating for ourselves, the least we can do is ensure that we're putting the right people who have common sense at the very least. I'll leave that one at that. I'll leave that one at that for now. But coming now to what role does and then the other thing, so even with the educational system, I think we're even going to take it a step lower to foundational, right? I'm raising kids right now in Canada. They're still in elementary school, what we will call primary school. Many of these things we're talking about, the skills we're talking about, they're already teaching them. They're already having access to technology exposure. They're required to. One of the homework my daughter, for instance, was recently working on is for her and some of her team members to come up together and develop a podcast, right? And she's just about to turn 12. She's not even 14. She's not 16. She's not in that age that most people would typically be done secondary school or high school in Nigeria. So I think that it's a revolutionization of the entire educational system from pre-K all the way through to university to even postgraduate courses and programs. So there's an entire revolutionization that needs to take place, a revamping of the system from the foundation, from cradle age, all the way to that post-secondary stage. That's my summation on that one. Now, what role does mentorship play? I think that mentorship plays a huge role, makes a lot of difference. I would, give a very special shout out to a couple very random people that I now call little sisters, that they found me on LinkedIn, right? They found me on LinkedIn, reached out, hey, Matt, we're doing this. And I would applaud them because these were people who, at the time they were doing this, they were 17, 18, 19, in their 20s, still in university. They not only sought people like myself out to guide them, they are still in Nigeria. These people, they are thriving in Nigeria, very well thriving, right? And they are doing absolutely well. But they sought people like me out to mentor them, to guide them, to teach them. And they're not just taking what I'm teaching them, they're also applying it to their peers. So first of all, there's like layers of mentorship that needs to happen, right? There's the structured mentorship that people like me and you, those of us on this call, in partnership with people like Mr. Sebi, who is still in Nigeria. These are some of the conversations that we're having. This in itself is a form of mentorship. It's a form of influence that we're exerting over Nigerian youth, over the people who are in Nigeria who need to develop themselves, who need to become global citizens, global professionals, right? Is that we're taking what we learned, what we know, what our experiences of being in Nigeria, our experiences of translating what we have in Nigeria to a global or a different setting and being able to thrive. So there's these pieces where there can be conversations like this. It will at least give knowledge and awareness to youth. And then there's the peer-to-peer where, like I said, the individuals that I had mentored who then in turn mentor their own peers, mentor their friends, put programs together, put one of them in particular, I remember she was even creating like a skill library training, a library of different skills and doing trainings. She'll put the curriculum together, put the content together, and put the information out there and invite people to come and learn, right? That's something. And just by even doing that, people have access. So not everybody may have access very directly to a mentor, but they can access a mentor through somebody who is being mentored by that person. So I believe that mentorship does play a very, very, very vital role in helping individuals, right? And then there's also like the leveraging the digital platforms that we have. Again, we've talked a lot about digital literacy in itself. So there's leveraging these digital platforms. There's WhatsApp. There's right now we're on Zoom, right? There's this content that we're going to put together and put it out there. So it's very important. And I would say this, look, sometimes, yes, it can feel frustrating. I've had good success stories with people that I've mentored who are in Nigeria, and I have very horrible stories to tell as well about people that I've tried to mentor, including members of my own household, that I have tried to mentor who would not take what you're telling them. And that can be very frustrating because it's like watching someone literally about to walk off a cliff and you're shouting at the top of your voice and saying, there is danger ahead, you need to turn back, and they refuse. Sometimes it is heartbreaking because they actually fall over the cliff, metaphorically speaking, of course, right? And other times, if they're smart enough and they do take a different turn, then you see the changes in their lives and it is rewarding. So I would say that, for a lot of youths in Nigeria, have mentors who are thriving in Nigeria so that they can teach you what they're doing, how they're navigating the Nigerian system. I'm listening to Mr. Siba talk about, oh, I went for this interview, I had this job offer, and I'm wondering in the same Nigeria that people say there's no jobs. But you know what's ironic is that even here, and I mean, I see a lot of Nigerian youths come here for university, and the same mindsets, the same attitude, the same belief, the same ways of doing. You see them bring it into a system that works, and they still cannot show anything for it. Why? Because there's that individual part that needs to happen. There's individual drive that has to happen. One of the reasons I always in my bio talk about the fact that I was offering at 18 and talk about the fact that I went through situations, like child sexual abuse. I intentionally put those things in my bio. The reason I put it is because when I'm talking to people, I want them to be able to understand that I'm not talking from a place of privilege. I'm talking from a place of having gone through being the lowest of at the lowest of your life, but somehow still choosing that I'm going to make something. And yes, we thank God for the grace of God. It was there. But the grace will not supply itself on nothing. The grace has to supply itself to something and then amplify that thing. So really, there's the part where as youths, you seek out the mentors. But before you seek out mentors, sit down and ask yourself, where do I want to go with my life? What is the vision for myself? What do I envision for me? Am I going into business? Am I going into politics? Am I going into academia? And then within that, what exactly it is that you want to do? Or maybe what options are potentially available to you. When you have identified what your own vision is, then begin to ask who are key players in this space. We've talked about things like LinkedIn, leverage it, go online. Let's say, for instance, you want to be a TV presenter, assuming, go online, Google on LinkedIn or wherever, TV presenters in Nigeria, and let it pull out something for you. Typically, it will pull out people who are like the biggest names. Don't just even chase big names only. Find other people that you can leverage, you can access. Ask people around you, does anybody know somebody who does this? So that they can link you up with those people. And then tell them point blank, ask yourself, what do I want from this mentorship? because mentorship is something that is very mentee driven and not the other way around. However, as a mentor, if I identify that you truly want this, you are serious, you are committed, but maybe you just don't know how to access the relationship and that I'm offering you to better yourself, I can then help you, teach you how to do that better. But you don't, it's mostly mentee driven. So I would say that I will put this one really back on the youths to say, you go and do that homework, set your own vision, identify key players in that place, both in Nigeria and abroad. The reason I'm saying both in Nigeria and abroad is that you have a holistic understanding of how things work in those fields from a global perspective, but also from a local perspective, right? And then set the time that you need. If it's 1 hour every week, 1 hour every month, have that conversation with them and, go with serious
Yeah.
questions as well. Okay, so I'll leave it there. I know we're at time.
Thank you very much, Anita. That's fabulous, and really, mentorship cannot be overemphasized, and everyone needs it to grow, whatever level they are.